Paparazzi.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Got this as well.
Thank you for coming. I know we are the last conference today, but I'm glad for those of you who have stayed behind and have joined us. The topic we are going to be talking about is our young people. We all know that they are the future for tomorrow, and we need to cherish them. I think these are the words which are in the booklets you've got. But more importantly, I think we all have a responsibility, and I've got my panelist members here today who represent a number of key organizations which is there to protect these young people from exploitation, guide them, support them, whether that's in the schools or in community centers or sporting fields. But the idea is, how do we support these kids to be our future for tomorrow in a positive way? So I've got four panel members, and what I'm going to do is to ask them to come forward, introduce themselves, who they are, which organizations they represent, and hopefully after that process we'll be having some questions thrown at them which they can respond. In terms of housekeeping, I am going to be encouraging people who are here to either use slido.com to submit questions, or if they want to come forward, there's a mic here and they can ask questions there. So please, feel free to do that. And I'm hoping that we can have a good two-way conversation to see how we can take this topic further. So more important than me is the panel members. So I'm going to introduce my first one, which is Mark Payne, who is the Assistant Chief Constable of the local policing West Midlands Police. So Mark, if you would like to come and introduce yourself.
Right, hi folks. Can you hear me? Right, good start. So I'm Mark Payne. I'm an Assistant Chief Constable in West Midlands Police. So West Midlands Police covers, it's the second largest force in the country after the Met. So we cover the whole of the West Midlands, Birmingham, Coventry and the surrounding towns, Wolverhampton. So I now sit as part of the executive team of West Midlands Police, which means that I'm responsible with the team for running the force. My day job is I look after local policing, which means that I have responsibility for the neighbourhood policing teams across the whole of West Midlands, which is obviously a great job. But before that, I was head of the CID, and before that, I was head of homicide. So I've spent a lot of my career dealing with violence, youth violence. I've undertaken over 200 murder inquiries, sat in lots of rooms with lots of parents who've lost their child, had to deal with lots of young people who end up in jail, their lives ruined as a result of, often one poor decision. And I find myself now with responsibility for looking after violent crime amongst many other things in my sort of portfolio, which means that I have a responsibility for working with everybody who has a vested interest in keeping our young people safe. Lots of partner agencies and lots of sort of third sector providers. And I'm hugely passionate about keeping young people safe and keeping young people away from violence, because having sat in those rooms with those parents and having sat through the court trials and seeing these young people's lives disappearing before their eyes, I think it's a huge responsibility that I have, but that lots of other partner agencies and lots of other people who have a vested interest in this share. And I think that together we have a responsibility just to help our young people in as many different ways as we can, and divert them away from the things that drive them into violence. And I'm sure we'll come on to talk about that. But that's who I am. That's why I'm here today, and I really hope we have a great conversation. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Mark. You will have gathered that I haven't done this before, and I'm not very good at this. I should have introduced myself. My name is Ghulam Vohra. I've been living in Coventry for the last 50 years. I come from Kenya, but in my personal passion, if you like, has been working in the community, and I wear many hats. But the whole purpose of this is that if there is something that I can do to support my community, whether it's my faith community, whether it's my neighborhood community, I get involved. And through the last 18 months, COVID has been one of those key areas that we've been working with. The presentation one before, it was really quite interesting for me because we've been engaged in that. So that's me. I also, in terms of the reason I think Julie asked me here, is I'm the co-chair of the Coventry Community Forum. So that's an IAG that works with the West Midlands Police in terms of scrutinising how they are working effectively in Coventry. So I think that's the reason I've been asked to chair this. So apologies, I should have done that first. But anyway, my next panelist that I would like to invite is the youngest member of the panel, somebody who's done a lot of fantastic work, and it's Tyler Campbell. I think we're going to see a video first, then Tyler will come and introduce himself.
A group of young people in Coventry have set up a youth club in the hope that it might stop children in the city getting involved in knife crime.
I think it's time to stop and time for young people to help other young people out there. Because of me being young as well, will help other young people be inspired, maybe stop doing what they do and have a better future and have better opportunities in their life.
These are young people here making their own stand and we're supporting them.
People said I'd get locked, I didn't think so. I was young, naive, only thought about dough. I look back now and think, why didn't I listen? Cause that day came and I ended up in prison. When you thought your condition inspirational to me, encourage your happiness so quickly. Wish you were still here right now, that's selfish of me. I know you've been free, you up there with Clayton and Clint Bailey and keep reading to your right, Miss Donna Conley, who have always snatched away from friends and family. Still can't believe how cool life can be. So we're all big again. Let's go then did it. We did it like they folks. We did it. We did it. Little favor, look up. Silent night, holy night, shepherds sing, and the sun glory shining, heaven and come.
My name is Tyler Campbell, I'm the founder of Fridays Coventry. It's a youth club I've set up to prevent knife crime, gang violence for 15-17 in Coventry, trying to keep more young people off the street for like entertainment and education as well.
In the video, Tyler's our host today, and the organisation Fridays have done fantastic work.
Yeah, my name is Tyler Campbell, founder of Fridays. We're on a trip today with the volunteers, some of the team, some of the music artists as well, to Radio 1 Extra.
But when I'm around certain people, I'm not feeling it. Keep it on the O, on the low, L-O-W, cause that's how it goes. Look on my left, I see Kennedy and Tyler Campbell. Yo, he's right next to
You have to follow it up now, mate. Finish that off.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, hello, hope everyone's well. Thank you for putting that video on as well. So my name is Tyler Campbell, I'm 20 years old. I'm the founder of Fridays Coventry. I'm also one of the 15 leaders in the City of Culture Leadership Programme, and it was set up to prevent knife crime, gang violence, and to tackle antisocial behaviour to better young people's future. I started Fridays Coventry because family and friends that I knew lost people to knife crime and they were really grieving, and I wanted to do something. So I set it up when I was in college, when I was 18 years old, and it was set up as a nightclub for young people, but with educational purposes. So we started at a local club. Upstairs was entertainment and downstairs was education. In the entertainment side, it was like barbers giving free haircuts to young people. There'd be hairdressers, makeup, DJs, presenters, even ping pong and virtual reality. In the education side, there'd be CV writing, job interview techniques, and different businesses were coming to promote what they did to better young people's future. Most of our projects are being based off like the entertainment and the education aspect, and it's all been off youth-led ideas. So it's actually young people helping young people, and young people are really the future. They're going to be the next generation, and we need to teach the parents, the families, and really get that negative stigma out of Coventry and bring that positivity back. Please contact us. We have a lot of different opportunities that we've got going. We've got electric go-karts as well with the Warwick Uni, Cov Uni, trying to help people into engineering opportunities. We've got a youth board as well for smart young people who can join and bring any ideas that they have and really bring their voice out. We've got a dance group, we've got a choir. They're actually going to be they're going to be the first choir to go to Eurovision and hopefully win it. So let's get a big round of applause for that. And we've got more opportunities to come. So any idea that anyone has, please come to Fridays. We'll hopefully have an opportunity that we can provide and better your future. But it's always about listening to your ideas and moving off that and spreading that positivity. At Friday's Conference on all social media, and we've still got a big future to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tyler. And it's wonderful to see a young person working with the other young people to promote that working together relationship. So thank you, Tyler. Fantastic work. My next panelist is Liz Gaulton, Director of Public Health. All yours, Liz.
Thank you, and thanks for your time, everybody, this afternoon. As Ghulam says, I'm Liz Gaulton, I'm Director of Public Health at the City Council, and you may think, what's public health got to do with youth violence, knife crime, etc., and actually quite a lot. And you may think public health, certainly over the last 18 months, has all been about COVID, and every time you hear a Director of Public Health talk, that is what they've been talking about. But about 2 years ago, we started on a journey in the city, both myself and Mike O'Hara, the area lead of police, in terms of actually working together to provide a preventative approach to preventing knife crime within the city and really support young people and communities to find better ways. And we know to do that we have to start really early with families, really early with communities, really early with individual young people. And that's the public health approach, that's the population-based approach. So it's about working from a very young age with school children. It's about putting some of the fantastic activities on, such as Tyler leads, but there's a range of other things we do at various steps along that footprint for people who feel that they are perhaps being drawn into violence or they are being victims of violence, and what we can do to prevent that happening. So a really big, rich area, but such an important area. And my ambition, I've been in the city for 5 years now, and my ambition is to improve outcomes for everybody in this city, but particularly for children and young people. So that's why I'm here today. Great to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And we will have opportunities to ask Liz questions and explore how public health are supporting this issue with young people. The last panelist, and not the least, is Rashid Bhayat, founder member of the Positive Youth Foundation and the CEO, I think, as well. So,
thank you. I think, yeah, Rashid Bhayat, CEO and founder of the Positive Youth Foundation, and also here representing the Coventry Youth Partnership, which is a network of organisations. Naomi's here from Grapevine, Tyler from Friday. So it's a collective of organisations from Coventry who come together for the betterment of young people. If I'm very honest with you, there's a few things that will come out today which some people might find uncomfortable, so I won't apologise for that, but what I will say is I've kind of come out of retirement today to speak about this subject. So for a number of years, I just stopped speaking about violence and young people because of the kind of challenges that it brings. I think young people have got a huge role to play within this, but as adults as well, we've really contributed to the issue that we have around violence that affects young people. So hopefully we'll explore some of that today. I think as well, credit to the organisers for taking on such a brave subject. You know, it's easy to shy away from things like this, but this is real. Young people's lives are being affected, families are being torn apart, and our communities are being crippled by this. So things like this are important, as long as we're being honest with each other, but really we're taking away from here, and away from here we're doing things with what we're sharing. So as an organisation, we've been around for about 25 years now, showing my age a little bit. We work with young people who find themselves in all kinds of complex and challenging circumstances, and amongst that are young people that are affected by violence. Now, violence doesn't just come on its own. You know, there's a whole host and range of things that lead a young person in a community to get into that kind of arena that then ends in violence. So let's hope we can unpick some of that today and really come up with some solutions that are meaningful rather than us just come in and have a good old chat today. So looking forward to the next time, and I think audience participation will be really important today because you know, quite a few of us as professionals will get around a table and we speak, but we need to hear from the people that this affects the most, and you guys taken an effort to come today on a Saturday afternoon. So yeah, let's really get together and make this as open as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. And I think it's good to see in our audience that we got people from a different age range. We got some very young people, and then we got some older people like me. So I'm hoping that we can all come together and use this topic and see how we can discuss and we can identify strategies and ways to take this forward. So I'm going to kick off by asking the first question, and I'm going to initially target it to a panel member, but then I will ask other panel members if they wish to add to that. So my first one, Tyler, is to you. Okay, you work with young people. What do you see are the barriers that we face getting young people to engage in a positive way? Yes, please. Yes, please.
I think the barriers are communication. I think all we need to do is actually talk to the young people, ask them what they actually want.
You don't need to do that.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can hear me.
Yeah, all you have to do is ask the young people what they want. Young people will tell you honestly what they want provided, services, and how you can do it. Social media is a big way to do it, but also talking to young people in person on the street is the best way that I communicate. We ask young people, what do you want? What prizes do you want? What ideas do you want to bring? And we always get different suggestions. Most of our ideas are from young people as well, so that's where we've actually got through to the success or the ideas that we've got within Friday. So I think it's the communication and it's the trust as well. If you promise a young person that you're going to help them out, you're going to bring support and communication, then they're definitely going to trust you and open up more, and that leads to more more young people being heard. They're going to tell word of mouth as well, so it's going to really help out.
I'll open this up to any of the other panel members. And do you feel in the areas that you are working with, public health, policing, positive youth, what would you see as barriers for these young people to bring them, to engage with them more effectively? Are there any? Yeah, please, Mark.
So we invest a lot of time trying to engage with young people. For very obvious reasons, lots of young people don't feel comfortable talking to the police often because of the roles that police play in society. Young people will not always feel comfortable approaching us. We work really, really hard as a police force to try and engage young people. We have officers now whose full-time job it is to work in schools. So schools will be the areas where we know most violence happens, or people who commit violence disproportionately come from those areas. So, we work really hard. But actually, we are realistic. We know there are always going to be young people who won't be comfortable talking to the police, which is why a lot of the effort that we put in is to generate, work in partnership with people who have better opportunities to understand what young people want, and then feed those in so that we can adjust the way that we work in accordance with the way that young people want to be policed. It's really important that we are seen as a legitimate body, that we're not an enforcement body. We're somebody who really wants to stop violence taking place and young people being involved in it. But actually, the partnerships that we're involved in are absolutely at the core of that. And young people through those partnerships can sometimes feel much happier talking to the police and engaging with us than they do directly. So,
Thanks, Mark. Rashid, I'm going to ask you that, because I know your organisation works with young people, but in that process, you must be coming across challenges and barriers all the time.
Yeah, I think it's the golden ticket, really, if we can find out what these barriers are. But let's just take a step back and consider life and consider society from the eyes of a young person. Let's look at what stage in a young person's life are things accessible to them. So cuts from central government to youth services means that there are no longer community youth centres. Young people can't just naturally access a safe place or safe adults that they can like they used to. Granted, there are organisations that are trying to do it, but the funding isn't there, and we can talk about that later, I'm sure. But access to safe provision is a huge barrier for young people. If you look at the education system, schools are stretched, absolutely stretched in terms of what they're being asked to do at the moment. So that then in turn leads to more barriers for young people within the education system, in particular those that aren't absolutely settled in a school, or school might not be for them. If we look at young people in general, anytime a young person or groups of young people are out, not always, but quite often, they're labelled as gangs. The police will tell you we only have 2 official urban street gangs in Coventry, but if you talk to the general public, because of the media perception, because of the adult voice around it, gangs are everywhere, which isn't true. It's young people just doing what young people do. And that's happened for all generations. Young people congregate, they stand outside the chippy, they stand outside wherever it is, and that's what they do. It's not a gang. So we've got an issue with working with the media on that. The big issue as well, really, is if you look at public spaces as well, how accessible is a public space for young people? Young people just want to kick a football around. Everywhere you go now, you see no ball games here signs. So where do young people now go to play? Where do they go and enjoy themselves? So if you look at a barrier for a young person's perspective, what we hear from there is there's very few places for a young person to go where they can feel safe and yet just do what they want to do as young people. That's something we need to address as a wider society, and it's a policy issue. All these things come down to policies which adults make, which just don't involve young people enough in those decisions. We have lots of things called consultation with young people. You hear that all the time. We consult with young people. But how often do we consult with the young people that it matters to most? When it comes to this subject of violence, how often are we actually working with young people who are most affected by violence? We can't just speak to young people generally and say, right, we've got the voice. It's not good enough. And the same thing goes with projects. You know, we commission a lot of work out of our organisation, and we're involved with a lot of funding at a national level, either giving or distributing. We've got into this really difficult position where we've made youth organisations use words such as youth violence and knife crime. So if you include those words in your funding application, you might get some money. But when you get the money, how close are you to the young people that need it the most? So we've got this real strange issue going on at the moment where we're forcing a sector down this, right, you've got to work on violence, you've got to work on knife crime. Unpopular opinion, we're actually causing more trouble and we're actually creating more problems for young people because we're working in an unregulated sector of working with young people where you can't just give the money to anyone to do this work. You've got to work with specialists, and that's a huge barrier for me. We end up picking up the pieces of a lot of young people that go through funded projects. The organisations have long gone from Coventry when the funding's gone, but the organisations that are Coventry-based are left to pick up the pieces. I'll go on for too long, so I need to shut up. But a barrier really is around addressing policy that affects young people the most by working with young people, but being really appropriate. Let's be clear here. If we're talking about violence, you've got to work with the young people and families that are most affected, not just everybody, and call it a violence project. Thank you, Rashid. I think that's very, very appropriate. My next question, I'm going to direct it to Liz. Whose responsibility is it to keep young people safe? And how can organizations and families work together to provide that safe, secure environment? And I think Rashid touched on that. You know, if we are going to have parks, if we're going to have facilities available for young people, they have to be safe. They have to be accessible. So.
Okay, thank you. So whose responsibility is it to keep young people safe? Well, it's all of our responsibility to keep young people safe, and it's certainly all of our responsibility to keep young people safe. But it has to sit with communities and in communities, and it has to sit with settings. So if you are in school, then the school at that time you are there has a responsibility to keep you safe, etc. But it's much bigger than that, isn't it? And no one organisation can be responsible. As a city, we have something called a safeguarding board, a local safeguarding board, which does have responsibility for keeping young people of the city safe. But at a more granular level, on a daily basis, we all have a responsibility to look out for the needs of everybody and indeed to protect people. So I would say it's everybody's responsibility to keep everybody safe. But we have to give people the tools to do that and also the permission to do that, because people may feel that they see things they're uncomfortable with but don't feel it's their responsibility to intervene, though I do think we all have a responsibility to intervene when we see things that we are uncomfortable with. So I'm probably going to leave it there and say we all have a role in it, and let's make most of that role. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Any of the other panel? Yes, please, Tyler, if you want to add to that.
Add a little quick thing in. From the last one, I think it's linked sort of communication again. So young people told us, as you said, about the gangs, like there was town gangs, there's other gangs going on in Coventry, but they said they didn't feel safe when we did it in town, when we first had it in July 2019. So at the end of December, we did Fridays on the road, taking what we did at Fridays, entertainment, education, to all different schools, community centres, and took Fridays to the people. We had so much success in that, so when we went to a school, like Lincoln School, the young people doubled the week after when we came back. So we found out actually taking Fridays, what we did with our barbers, giving free haircuts, the entertainment, education side, taking it to the people and letting us know where the areas where they want to go, where they feel safe. We have our security on the night there as well. We've had no issues ever at Fridays. The police have been involved and they've been really helpful. So I think it's just the communication side. We've taught Fridays through the young people. They feel a bit more safer and we've had more success than that. And we've actually seen more young entrepreneurs come out of Fridays and we're still trying to find them out today. And I think it's the volunteers. We have our volunteers that escort the young people there and back to Fridays. And just again, our first funding was from police as well. So they've really helped out. And I think it's just keeping that safe and secure establishment that Fridays has, and in that name.
Thank you, Tyler. That's absolutely spot on. And I can vouch for that because I'm a governor at Linghall School. And that Fridays project that happened at school, the school was absolutely fantastic. My next question is probably to Assistant Police Constable. How can you support and empower the young people to be proactively engaged in some of the, like the work that Tyler's talking about?
So let me just, I'll answer that question. I'll just go back to the last question as well.
No, please do.
So here are some of the facts about violence and where violence happens and where people live who tend to be perpetrators and victims of violence. They have typically lower standards of education, lower educational outcomes. They have worse health outcomes. They have more difficult relations with the law and are over-policed and end up disproportionately going to jail, disproportionately getting cautions as young people, which make their life opportunities worse. You know, so you see an overlapping of all the public bodies, all the people with responsibility for young people. They are all worse in areas where violent crime is higher. So, you know, it is absolutely everybody's responsibility to do it, but at the minute we are not doing it well enough. Young people, and going back to a point that Rashid makes, young people, where they behave in a social way, they gather, they play football, they might play music or whatever young people do. Typically, the older generation perceive that behaviour as antisocial behaviour, which means that often what young people see as social, everybody else sees as antisocial. And then they call the police, and then the police come, and, you know, the young people disproportionately are subject of, from these areas, will be subject to law enforcement, which is just the wrong way. So how do we empower young people? Well, the first thing is that people with responsibility have to find a way of getting the voice of young people into the decision making. And, you know, we started off at the front talking about engaging young people. It is really, really difficult. You know, young people don't feel comfortable sometimes coming into environments where these decisions are made. They don't feel often that they are listened to. They don't have, a voice around the table. You look around the table where these decisions are made, and Tyler is a real exception to this, but there are often people who look like me, who are white males, slightly older, and as a result, we think we know what young people want. What's really important is that we open ourselves up to the people who actually understand what young people want and let them influence the way that we spend the money, because frankly, the people at the lower end of our organisations, they can't influence the way that money is spent in the way that the people at the top do. So we have got to be receptive to listening to what young people want, and have got to open the door to young people who have all the best ideas but often can't find a way to get their voice heard.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Rashid, would you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think...
How do we support and empower young people?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. In all honesty, it's about listening to young people. It's about giving young people a credible, a genuine voice. And I'm so glad you raised a bit about representation, because, now more than ever, the phrase is out there, but we've been asked some big questions now about how we operate as a society. If you look at all the race relations work that's gone on over the last year, a lot of questions are being asked now. Who makes decisions and for who? And I still think we've got a big challenge on our hands in terms of how we recruit, not just as kind of a social sector, but almost as a country, and how we deal with decision making. In that, until we have a recruitment process in place for board members, for employees, and for civil leaders that reflects the people that are going to be worked with, we're always going to be here. So in 5, 10, 15 years' time, unless boardrooms start looking like the people that they intend to serve, we're going to be here. Because how can you expect somebody who comes from a real middle-class background to understand what's going on the streets in Hill Fields, Canley, Wood End, in Coventry? For all the goodwill in the world, they're there with the right language, they're there with the right intentions, but those people that live in those communities, they may not be able to articulate themselves in exactly the same way as you might be able to, but their message is so important. And I think we've got to be braver as a society and as professionals to break down our own barriers. It's not even about giving up a seat at the table. It's about pulling up another chair sometimes. You know, sometimes we get quite possessive, like, oh, this is going to cost me my role, or this could cost me my position. We've got to put that to one side. Young people's lives are being lost. This is what we're talking about here. This is not a nice to have. Kids are dying. My organisation and other organisations here, we're working with the families and the young people who are actually losing their lives. A year ago, on the first day of lockdown, a kid that has been with us since 6 years old was brutally murdered. You know, and that's the reality. We're dealing with the families still a year onwards. Policy moves on, but the voice of young people, the voice of those families, and the experts in the community that we just ignore on a daily basis, that's what we need to start listening to now. We need to start mobilising our community members, not just in forums, not just in kind of, let's have a consultation like I said before. It's just not enough. Our recruitment needs to reflect the people we want to be working with, and that's how we're going to move things forward here. I mean, I'm glad you said it, because I think it's a really important thing to accept. When we're looking at the policymakers around violence, how many come from the communities that this affects the most? You know, that's the challenge for all of us. And we've got to take that on quite seriously, because we can talk forever. But until those people are sat behind the table as experts, it's not a race thing, because one of the challenges that we have in Coventry is, like many parts across the UK, it's not a race war, not at all. This now includes everybody. And that actually raises a different issue. I grew up in an area called Hill Fields that some of you might know. Violence isn't new. Violence has been there since I was a kid. Knives have been there, guns have been there. We've always known violence. So why now that it affects more communities, because of this invention called county lines that has been there forever, all of a sudden now it starts to mean more to people? That's an issue. We've been calling out for this support for years, but now it's a bigger issue. That support is going to come, because it has to come. Because whilst the violence has always been there, the levels have increased, the risk has increased. So we've got to do something with that now. For me, you know, these things are useful, and we've got to have those open conversations.
Thank you, Rashid. Other two colleagues, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't mind adding.
Please, if you want to say something. I'm going to shut up after that and open the questioning to the people on the floor. So if any of you do want to ask a question, I suggest if you try to come to the front here, and you can then come and speak on the mic. Also, slido.com if you wish to register a question. Please, Tyler, carry on.
Hello. Yeah, I think, honestly, you've got to ask people what they want. Asking people what they want, you'll get the true answer. Recently, we've even had people offer opportunities saying they want to have a choir, they want to have a dance group, they want a football team, they like sports. We're bringing that. We've got a Friday's football team on our way. People are interested in acting. We've got a massive opportunity that's not been done before, with a movie being made in a week. Yes, a week. You've heard that right. So we've got crazy opportunities, and this is all from young people. Even last year, Radio 1 Extra offered us an opportunity to take DJs, music artists, as you've seen there, to Radio 1 Extra. That's not an everyday opportunity. That's going to London, and from Coventry, when you see that, it's a massive place. It's like America. It's crazy. So when you go there, the young people loved it, and it's empowerment. Anything that people want, you just got to ask them what they want, and I provide answers. If it's in real life, you ask them, or if it's online, and I really give you the answer. So I think empowerment comes from the motivation that you want to provide for young people. How much do you want to motivate people to do better, to get success, and show them what the outcome of success is. When you see young people who are actually going on to, like, we've had volunteers that have gone from selling drugs on the street to actually being interested into news round. They've got BBC contacting them, trying to be a presenter. You've got other people with a young girl that's got a song on to BBC. When you see the outcomes of what can happen, it motivates more young people to do what they want to do and achieve the success they want to succeed. So I think it's just asking people what they want and motivating them and making sure that you're passionate for the young people.
Thank you, Tyler. That's excellent. I've got two questions on the board, so I'm going to read the first one out. Because funding is scarce, are youth organisations only working with certain groups of young people chasing the funding? And I think you touched on that, Rashid, because funding is that issue. But does it actually go through the system, and does it serve? And is it restricted to certain groups?
Good question. Good question, Sally Butt. Is it say? Sally Block, good question. Yes, unfortunately. No organisation, the local authority, the police, funding isn't how it used to be. Nobody's got that luxury just to spend how they want. That's the reality of things. But the way funding is set up, highly restrictive now, yeah. Unfortunately, like I said before, there's certain criteria that you have to meet to achieve the funding as an organisation. And all too often, I'm afraid, you have to go with what the current trends are, what the current risks are, and what's most needed in the city. And you can't get away from the fact that Coventry needs that support around young people, violence, exploitation. So unfortunately, what we've got now is a situation where many organisations have to become that organisation. And the massive risk with that is they're not set up in that way around their governance, their staff don't have the skills to do that work, they certainly don't have the safeguarding to be able to make sure young people are safe while they're with them. So the way funding is set up is a massive issue, and it's contributing, in our opinion, in our professional opinion, it's contributing to the further exploitation of young people, the further issues with young people and violence, because what we do by doing that, by having those funding streams in place and by funding organisations, we're fooling ourselves. We're kidding ourselves that we've got organisations out there doing that work. But it doesn't take much to realise the young people coming through the door aren't the young people that need the most support, and that's the real challenge we've got. And that's hard to listen to, it's hard to say, it's hard to accept, that we've created an absolute monster of an industry that we need to pull in very quickly, because young people who are most affected by violence are still carrying on in that without the support they need, and we've done that as adults. It goes back to my point around policy.
Thank you for that. I know Liz wants to say something on this.
Yeah, so because we were quite organised in Coventry quite early on around this area, around youth violence, we did manage to pull in quite a lot of what we call funny money over the last couple of years. But the trouble with that, as Rashid has just described, is it's people who come in, it's short-term funding, and then they go away again. Then organisations such as PYF are left picking up the pieces, if you like. So that's a positive in a way that we get the money in, but it's not a long-term solution. So I think my preferred option, which is where we're really pushing this, is that violence prevention becomes everybody's business and every organisation's business. So if you take something like health visiting service, one of the services I'm responsible for, then our health visitors are one of the many eyes and ears going into homes, looking at things that are not quite right very early on. That could be around domestic abuse, it could be about children that aren't thriving, and it's about getting in at that stage and actually working with a family to make sure that we don't end up in a situation 10 years later when we've got very vulnerable children who are just not finding the support they need. So short-term money, it's good in the short term, but it comes with lots and lots of problems, and it has to be about schools, health, all of those services, police working together to come together with communities to make a long-standing difference.
Okay, it's trying to have an impact in terms of embedding processes, yeah. I think. The second question, and I'm going to look at the Assistant Constable to kick off trying to answer that. Is there any work being done with young girls who are vulnerable to involvement in violence? And I'm going to then follow that up with you, Tyler, because I think, yeah.
Uh-huh. Got you.
So, Sally, can I just... Where's Sally? Sorry. Online.
Online.
Oh, in which case I can't ask her. That was a good start, wasn't it? So, I think young girls are often the sort of the missing group in some of our violent crime work. So if you look at some of the pathways that we have available to divert young people out of violence, they tend to be aimed at young males because they are often the perpetrators and victims of violent crime. So they'll often be, around sports or sort of music, or some of the pathways that are very typically aimed at young men. But I can tell you, young girls are probably exploited more by gangs than some of our young boys. They will often be the people who will be used to carry guns because they know young boys are more likely to get stopped and searched than young girls are. They will often be people who are used to take drugs into events because men will often, young males know they'll be searched more. And the exploitation around young girls and the amount of murders where I have, run the murder, where often the weapon was taken to the event by a girl because they're frightened of the violence that might be perpetrated towards them, or they often, feel they have an obligation to help, take weapons or drugs into events. It is a real problem. And one of the things that we're looking at the minute is where we are spending finite public money, are we spending it in the right places? So to Rashid's point, do the funds, the scarce public funds, actually go to the root of the problem? And I do think we do have a problem that the diversion pathways we have available to us are often not aimed at young girls and are not helpful in keeping young girls away from violence and away from getting drawn into violence and some of the causes of violence. So I think that's a really good question, because at the minute my answer to that would be no. I don't think we have the right provision in place to keep young girls away from violence in the way that sometimes we do around young men.
Thank you, Mark. Tyler, would you, because I know the video clip that I show, there were both boys and girls in terms of the support. So do you want to try to expand on that answer?
I think everyone's really vulnerable to involvement in violence, but yeah, especially girls as well. Like within girls, they are seen as a shadow where it's only the males who are doing it. But yeah, within the projects that we do, I feel like it does suit to all women and men, and it is the ideas that they can bring. Any females and males can bring in ideas that can better their future. I think we can't ever judge anyone. So when we're on the street or when we're online, when we're talking to anyone, don't just talk to someone that you feel comfortable talking to. Speak to everyone. If it's girls on the street, if it's guys on the street, and treat them all equally, because you never know which one who's going through the same experience as well. You know what I mean? So I think, so that question, yeah, it is no as well, but I think we can do more by doing more courses, doing more programs, and that's what we've got coming up within Fridays as well.
Thank you, Tyler. Anybody in the audience, please, do you like to come and, is this on, yeah?
If you were a policy maker, as a young person, what would you do and why? Yeah. So.
Who wants to take that? As a policy maker, what would you do and why?
Is that creating rules?
So I'll have a go at that. One of the, and I'll talk from a sort of a policing point of view, that's my area of expertise. One of the big policy barriers that we have, I think, is the the way that we drive young people into the criminal justice system. There are actually very few levers available. So police get called to a violent crime. What do? We arrest people because that's, or we deal with them by way of caution or charge, and it drives young people into the criminal justice system. What I would much rather be doing with young people is having a range of options available to us that take that young person who might be the first or the second time they're involved in violence and divert them away from the things that are causing the violence. So it might be they are getting drawn into gang culture, and Rashid is right to say, gangs are not everywhere. They are not dominating society, but sometimes they get young people get drawn in for a range of reasons that actually, if we did the right thing with them at that point and pointed them in a different direction, we could give them a much better life outcome. Because what I know is that as soon as young people are in the system, their life chances are automatically much, much worse than people who are not in the system. It prevents them accessing jobs, it prevents them accessing careers, it prevents them accessing often further education. So from my point of view, if I was to have the sort of policy sort of platform, I would put much more effort into getting young people diverted away from the things that are causing the violence, rather than putting the money into some of the criminal justice outcomes that the police really don't want to. We don't want to be dealing with violence. We don't want to be sending people to prison. We don't want to be giving young people criminal convictions. But actually, in policy terms, there are very little alternative routes that we can go down. I would prefer a policy outcome that allowed police to get hold of young people and point them in an entirely different direction the first or second time we come into contact with them.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else want to add to that? Rashid, I'm going to pick on you because in what you've said earlier, you have been critical of the policymakers because of whether they're engaging with the right people or the right people around the table. So taking that same question, if you were the policymaker, what would you do and why?
God, I wish I didn't criticise anyone now.
No, but you know what I'm getting at.
No, it's a great question.
It's a very valid question.
That's a really good question. Nice one. I think, first of all, reinvest in early intervention. So, you know, we're dealing with things way too late. We're dealing with things at a crisis point. It's all kicked off. The proverbials hit the fan. We're trying to find money to fix things, but it's so far broken by then. So reinvest in early interventions through schools, through youth services, through the health service, through the police service, more officers on the ground, which is out of their control. So that'd be a really big thing. Start with that. Second thing, representation at a policy level. Representation of our MPs, where they sit, the respect that they have, representation of young people, maybe even do myself out a job, and a certain amount of people of a certain age should be represented as well. So we're really being careful about we're not just filling it with old dinosaurs like me when we're talking about policy. I think third thing I thought of really was just about kind of doing this a lot more, having real honest, safe conversations where you get to speak to people. But we've got to get these conversations from a fancy venue like this onto the streets where it matters. I think that's what's really important. If we took this conversation now to the streets of Wood End, to Canley, we're going to get some real honest answers, but we're not brave enough to do that just yet, but we need to be. So I think that's a little bit around that.
Thank you, Rashid. I'm hoping the MPs got that message there. I think that's very important that we try to get the political side of things. Anybody else got any questions? Please, if you'd like to come forward, have this young man. Please. Give us your name as well, if you may.
Okay. My name is Nathan Field, and from the perspective of a 14-year-old, what can I do to help?
Thank you,
Great
Nathan.
question.
That's a very, very valuable question. I'm going to look at all 4 panel members and say, who wants to say how you can engage Nathan into the process? Go on, Tyler.
I'd say big up to you, Nathan. Great question as well. I'd say contact Fridays. You can even create your own ideas, projects. I think I talked to you before, we've got a youth board as well. So this is 11 to 18, where you can bring any of your ideas, projects, have your own voice as well. You know what I mean? And also our field program, we've got a business leadership program, and any other ideas that you want to bring to Fridays, we're always open to ears. We know we have all these opportunities. Any interest that you have, we can provide an opportunity.
Thank you. Anybody else? How can you make use of Nathan? And please, Liz.
Just really want to say admire your confidence and don't lose that, and you need to keep challenging us as senior leaders and policy makers. So yeah, just keep going and keep it out there. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yes, please, Tyler. Tyler's forgot something for you, Nathan.
Have you got a talent? Like, what are you interested in? Sorry.
Well, I go to this theatre club every week, and I find that to be quite fun, and I have a talent of creative writing when it comes to like stories and stuff, fictional stories, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because right now we've got a book publishing house as well within Friday, so anyone who's got a story to tell, come to us as well. We can get your book out there, not just to Coventry, but around the whole country. And our movie as well, our new funding idea within the movie being made in a week. We're looking for screenwriters as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan. Thank you.
Big up, Nathan.
Hello. A quick question. Working right back at the beginning, you spoke about diversion activities and that sort of thing. Looking at young people in history, they were like warriors and hunters and things like that. And I think, if I think about my 15-year-old self, I wanted to be strong and tough and courageous, and I liked adrenaline. And I look at the cities we have, and I don't see any avenue for that. There's computer games and there's nothing to show for young people that they're courageous and that they can take pain and they don't flinch and all of that. Are we building societies as old people in a very sort of head-led way rather than a heart-led way that we would if we were 15, I thought?
Okay, thank you for that. Interesting question.
Good question. I don't mind taking that.
Please,
did you want to take it?
We can share if you want.
Go on, Mark. But both of you.
Double act.
Yeah, double act. We're our first double act. So I think something that we've spoken about a lot. You're absolutely right. You know, the people who are making the decisions are older people, and we are making decisions based on probably what life was like when we grew up,
and the world has moved on a huge amount now. And probably by projecting what we think is the right thing to do onto young people. And what we're terrible at is letting young people influence the way that we do business. So you're absolutely right. You know, the outlets that young people might want might not be actually the things that we are putting in place. And it comes back to, we've got to find a better way of letting young people influence the way that we make decisions.
Yeah, I totally agree. Great question. I just want to pick up on a word you used, because I think it's a really important word. You use the word diversion, and we use that a lot with young people. But take that as an analogy of driving. If you take a diversion, your destination is still the same place in most cases. So when we're trying to divert young people from crime, they could still end up in the same place if we're not careful. We need to think more developmental about our work. And to address your point around kind of the creativity and what we're doing with young people, we're the city of culture. So now's our time to get that right. You know, opportunities will come to the city, and we have to be in the right place at the right time to be able to really make most of those opportunities, to make sure they don't just pass us by, but the young people that need it the very most will be there to benefit and then to influence what happens beyond that, because the legacy of that work is going to be just as important to make sure that all of our kids in this city have the best possible life chances. So I think it's a good question.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashid. Thank you, Mark. I've been asked to wrap up this very interesting discussion, and I know we could probably go on much longer. So I'm going to ask my panelists, you will ask, is if they would like to give one little message or one statement that you want to make in conclusion. So I'm going to start with you, Liz.
Okay.
And just work my way around. Sorry.
Very briefly then, no one's mentioned mental health yet. I just wanted to say mental health, early intervention, really, really important. Massive crossover with youth violence and families and individuals thriving. So didn't want to lose that thread from today. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Mark?
So I suppose I'm just going to talk a little bit about bravery. So Nathan, I think, you know, really brave to get up in front of a group of people and ask a question. So I think we all need to be a bit braver. I think the people like me need to be brave enough to sort of open the door a little bit and let other people in, people who actually know what's going on, and listen to them. And then I think when that door is open, young people have got to be a little bit braver in terms of walking through it and being courageous enough to actually sit down and tell truth to the people who actually have the opportunity to do something about it. So it would be great if we could all be a little bit braver and you know, be really courageous enough to listen and work together and make things better for everybody.
Thank you, Mark. Tyler?
I think my lasting words is that you've all got talent and don't lose it. You can't beat positivity, like you can't fight it. Being positive is always going to have a positive future, positive action. Everyone in this room has got a talent. Our slogan is unlocking youth potential. So young people and people in general are all born with a talent, a potential. It's about pushing that, trying to find out what it is, and carry on being positive and trying to better your future and others around you. So stay positive, you've got a talent, don't lose it, everyone.
Thank you, thanks, Tyler. Rashid?
I would say give young people the chance and be prepared to be amazed.
Thank you. Well, I think with that statement, I'd like to thank the panelists for joining us. I've been very brave to stand up and be, you know, put their views across, answer those critical questions. So I thank all the 4 panel members. So can we just put our hands together? And then obviously a thank you to all of you for hanging on, being with the last show today. And there's a gentleman is going to want to say something. So can I thank all of you for attending, for participating. Sir, did you want to say something?
I wanted to come, so I'm George Freeman, founder of the Big Tent, and I wanted to thank you for this last session, and for all of you. You've captured, Tyler, your last words there, just completely nailed what the Big Tent is all about. And I just wanted to, we're closing the festival formally now.
Thank you.
To just leave with you one message, really, which is, when we created the Big Tent, it was because we believed that most people in this country care deeply. And they care most of all deeply about the people and the places they love. And they wish the government cared a bit more about the people and the places they love. And government looks like this big machine. I'm an MP, I've been a minister in the government. Believe me, I don't want to serve a machine. I want to serve the people and places I love. And so we set up the Big Tent because we felt that politicians have got to come out of the comfort zone, get out of the tribal party politics, get out of the blue suit, come out of Westminster and come and support leaders on the ground, yourselves, actually making a difference. And that ultimately, if we unlock the capacity, the capability of every Tyler, of every city like Coventry, of every neighbourhood, then we could do for this country what Gareth Southgate is doing for the England team.
Aye, come on!
And so I'm conscious I'm standing between you and a pint in the rare English sunshine. And I just wanted to say it's been an absolute pleasure for us to come to Coventry. We've brought a load of people who'd never heard of Coventry, let alone been here, and they've fallen in love with the city. The games makers, as I call you, the festival volunteers have been extraordinarily kind, welcoming. You know, I'm a Tory politician. I wasn't sure how the Labour leader of the City Council would get on with me. We're best friends. And he said, please come back, bring back the festival, and we're going to try and support Tyler in his venture. And I just want to say this. If you're interested in what we're doing, if you want to help, please, will you just go and have a look at the Big Tent website, scroll to the bottom and click on the register as a sign up. And if you've got a project you want us to help, just let us know, email us. We're backed by a whole series of entrepreneurs who've got tons of money and they want to make a difference. They want to make the world a better place. They don't want to give it to the Tory party or the Labour Party. They want to help people on the ground. And we're going to try and help Tyler, and we're going to try and help more of you. So if you're interested or you want to help us and support us, please just click on, else we'll lose you. You'll drift off tonight and we'll all say, wasn't that wonderful? How do I stay in touch? If you just click on that button, we can stay in touch. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being who you are.
Thank you for hosting this. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, be safe and have a safe journey back home, and the pubs are open. Thank you.